My brain hurts. Mm, Really kind of tired and worn out today, but having a little bit of fun doing some experimentation with OBS. So I'm playing with some software to figure out how to increase what I can do for this channel. Don't know they'll have it figured out enough. Like I'll play with it over the next few days, but with OBS I should be able to um, do screen captures on YouTube Live of my laptop. So I may see what I can do showing what BuildBox looks like and some of the operations in it look like. Um, I might also be able to use it to do still images, like a picture-in-picture still images of like the board game stuff. And if I scan my paintings on a scanner bed, might be able to put them up on the side here while I talk about them. And then like once I get to the point where I start working on the animation again or do any of my other recorded movie programming kind of stuff, if I want to talk about them and have a still image of it next to me, that should be possible. Or even small animation videos or clips from stuff. And then I might be able to do like written excerpts from writing. So if I do like a bigger, like a month-long fiction writing project, um, I might be able to do like my favorite excerpt from the day of writing and just have it right up on the side there without context. Sometimes those can be hilarious. I know when I participate in the National Novel Writing Month, when we're on the forums, some people will share like without context, share your favorite sentence of the week or whatever, and people post things and like, I need to know what the context of that sentence is. So, so I'm playing around with OBS. I've been playing with it for about a couple hours now, and had a few hiccups trying to figure out how to get it to do stuff. Right now, I'm pretty sure I can make it. Um, I mean, I know I can get it to record whatever's on my desktop. I can record that and I can live stream that too. I haven't meshed all the parts I need out for using it for live streaming yet. I have to enter some kind of key, go through all that. But once I get that figured out, I'll be able to live stream on here or Twitch or wherever and get green screen effects, get the ability to display still images or slides or clips from like if I get questions or comments or if we end up doing like a charity benefiting project or something like that at some point, I might be able to do a sort of like a live interaction where somebody could like if I were doing an art project one, somebody could send me a half finished sketch or something like that. It's like as a challenge, like, okay, here are these 5 pieces for this challenge. Now you have to finish the piece. And so like we could do things like that. And it's an interactive environment to play with each other in a creative way. And so I'm excited about the potential to be able to do that. It looks like this laptop, despite the fact that the frame of it is breaking, and I am really straining out some of the processor with all the stuff I'm doing all at once. Um, it can handle some of the OBS stuff. I ran it through a couple hours of playing around this afternoon, and it's working. So that's pretty hopeful. Um, And so I'm looking at like using it for capturing in progress video game creation, um, maybe uh, commentary on some of my other past projects. I don't know that I will ever do a picture-in-picture like watch through of a movie or somebody else's video. It's there's just too much risk with copyright stuff, and I don't want to do stuff like that. Um, I mean, my movie night programming, I do I do watch a movie, but I don't include the movie in what I'm watching. Like, open it in a separate window. I don't want to get strikes over doing that, but I do want to share the experience of watching movies and experiencing them for the first time. Or in some cases, there are some of my absolute favorites, what I consider my classic movies, and I'd love to share those with people, but I know I can't broadcast them, even if it's questionable whether or not there's enough, um, you know, fair use as I'm adding content to it, making commentary or drawing over the top of it. That's like that's great. I don't want to fight the court case to prove it, and I don't have to if I can point people in the direction to watch the original video, and uh, watch it along with me. So I mean, I can do that. So OBS looks like it has a lot of capabilities of what I can do with it. Playing around with BuildBox um, is now more possible than before, but also using OBS, the editing software I use for editing my own videos um, is HitFilm Express, and being able to show people what I'm doing in HitFilm, if they're ever curious about ways to do some of the things I may end up doing, um, that that in itself, like I can use HitFilm for some minor animation, and I can use HitFilm to do things like witness protection effects. There's some green screening, specialty whites. Um, I could probably use it to make some of the openings for this channel, uh, as well as editing the videos with it. And I mean, being able to show my ability to use the editing software, if I do some music creativity, I have a program here called LMMS. It's Linux Music Multimedia Station or something like that. Um, it might be Linux Multimedia Station, or Music Media Station, something like that. But LMMS offers my viewer count keeps going up and down and up and down and up and down, so I must be driving some folks off. LMMS offers the capabilities of creating tracks, beats, and whole songs, and I do have a few fun projects I want to do with it. I am not musically inclined yet, but I'm working on it. But being able to show off like what it's like to try to go in on ground floor, trying to learn to use LMMS and see what I can do with it, and the inevitable failures and the weird things I discover you can do that I didn't intend to do, but now I have an idea of how to use, those can be fun to share. So like when I use that video editing, I can, with like the paintings, I've had a couple of friends comment that like they're neat. They don't necessarily want to watch an hour to an hour and a half of video to see it. I could potentially record myself doing these paintings, run it through my editor at increased speed, and then comment on it while it plays at a fast forward pace. So it offers capability of doing that, especially if I do like bigger projects or bigger paintings or bigger stuff like that. When I do more projects for product and service category kind of thing, it may be beneficial to be able to put in small clips of me working on it, as well as showing what I've achieved by the end of the day on these updates. And so it's a little less like me narrating after the fact. So yeah, I'm hopeful about the potential of that to increase my capabilities of control the type of content that I'm able to use with. So it's just, yeah, wow, lost the ability to speak there for a second. Yeah, being able to use OBS to upgrade what I'm doing with this is the hope, and increase my ability to do things. I do have a project. I've mentioned previously that I'm a Star Wars fan, and there are a lot of people out there who are big on hating on the prequels. And if those prequels were just tweaked a little, I think they would be a pretty impressive. I kind of like them as they are. Yeah, there are things I don't like about them, but I my friend and I have this term called headcanon for it's a great picture, isn't it? Head with a cannon in it. But we have this term that we use for what we actually think the real story is. And I usually look at like the Star Wars movies as like they're not masterpieces of film, but I always imagine them more like tavern tales. You're sitting in a tavern with a guy who's telling you a story. You can't expect it to be, like fit like like real history, or like you expect in a tavern tale. Some of my favorite old tavern tale style novels, short stories. There are even some animated ones in all the old Rocky and Bullwinkle, where you have that the Royal Air Force pilot guy who tells these tall tales at the end of every commercial break or something sometimes. And tavern tales, they're just they're quirky. They're like, the world doesn't work that way, but that doesn't detract from the fact that this is a decent story. And it's fun to hear somebody tell their old war stories, even if they don't make sense in the long run. And so I always really feel like Star Wars movies, to a certain degree, are those. Like, the narrator isn't necessarily reliable. The history's details maybe don't always line up quite right, but you get a sense of what the story of the events in the universe mean to the characters in the universe. And so I've always looked at the movies like that. But there are also some times where I think like, okay, so what other kinds of things like does the storyteller miss? Like, what aren't they telling me? What don't they know? And if you really examine those ideas and explore further, you can flesh out the story in a way that makes like, oh, that makes so much more significance to these events. I didn't realize like how much that changes the meaning of this event that seems sort of like a loose thread. And so I have this headcanon of mine that I kind of want to do. I keep debating on this. Like, one of the ways I kind of want to, like, I would love to do a Lego stop motion animation remake of some of the prequels. That's a lot of work, though. I might be able to do it like a half of that, where I use Legos posed in a position like slides while I narrate a story. Might be a little bit easier to do. Otherwise, if I do a complete stop motion, it's going to be 2 years before I do this. It's also possible to do like a mocap, a motion capture animated. I don't know how successful that would be because I haven't tried it yet. But I can do, if I can do the police protection blurs in HitFilm, there's a technique for doing that where you can sync it to track a point on a person's head. And if I make point markers that are super obvious, then I can get HitFilm to track hands, elbows, shoulders, torso, hips, legs, head, and use those points to anchor uh, like an illustration or a cartoon of characters, and then motion act out scenes. Now, with head rotation, you may get additional work in having to flip from front on to side on illustrations, and just doubles the workload, sometimes quadruples the workload to get it to work right. So I would rather reserve that for very short stuff, uh, like very short video clips or something like that. I wonder if I did some. Oh, that would be weird to try. Make like miniature Lego fighter, like a X-wing fighter and a TIE wing fighter in miniature, and um, photograph them as still images on a green screen piece of setup, and then remove the green screen and have them insert them on mocap uh, dots that I can then, have them fly in a dogfight on the skin. There are all sorts of weird things I can do when I get the software working right. And being able to show people how I maybe do some of these things, if I get it to a point where I can figure it out and people are curious how they could do that too. I want to be able to show them how, because I want them to be able to do stuff. And I want to see what they do with it. And OBS opens up some of that possibility for me. So I'm kind of excited. I will tinker around a little with seeing if I can get something looking good enough in BuildBox in the next day or so, and then see if I can use OBS to narrate discussing what I made as a video live, while also potentially opening up a window and showing what I had to do in BuildBox. Like I could do stacked windows like that. And yeah, I mean, it's like it makes it so that, and I may be able to, I don't know for sure yet if it's possible to do like camera 1 and camera 2. It's got to be somewhere. I imagine it's got to be possible to do that. So like when I collab with somebody, like ask them the question and then flip to camera 2 and looking at their face, or set up my camera as a mini box, say up here, and have the main screen focused outward on somebody else. It's just the possibilities it makes available. Well, I mean, do you ever think you're going to use uh, a YouTube channel for producing anything, or are you're happy with just consuming at this point. Oh, geez. Did I just collapse everything? You still there? Not responding. Well, that's my browser decided it wanted to be difficult. I have I have maybe been pushing things a little hard today on my computer. OBS is still open too, so that may be doing some of that. There we go. But nope, that's the other browser. There we go. All right. I should not click away. That immediately caused problems. Am I showing up or no? Did you lose me? My computer's freaking out. Okay, so wow. I'm getting some massive lag because I think I'm straining my processor. Okay. Yeah, I got 4 or 5 things running all at the same time. I think I've got BuildBox, OBS, another browser open, and this one live streaming. So it's sort of hitting the edge of what this laptop can do. But I I can't I don't know enough to pull stuff into OBS. But one of the things I have found it's useful for is um, capturing video content of like tutorials on how to use some of the software that I'm playing around with. And I just need to be able to take a little clip of like, there is a video I hopped onto the other day by somebody who tells you how to use, how to live stream on YouTube with OBS. And then OBS Studio Tutorial 2018, Make Your Streams Look Pro, has an absolute crap ton of useful information about the things you can do with it. And I have both of those videos, but like I don't need everything he's doing in some of those videos. And so I can actually use OBS to capture a 3-minute chunk of video telling me what I need to know, and then I can compile them into a video later that I can watch off the internet when I'm traveling or whatever on my laptop, and I can use it as like an instructional clip to help me remember what I need to do to achieve a certain effect. That's useful just in and of itself. So like the very versatility of what I'm learning to be able to do with this, like I'm hopeful that this ups the game a little bit, because there are some interesting projects I can do if I have the capabilities, and OBS being free is a huge plus. HitFilm Express is free, and what I can do between the two of those, I mean, it expands my ability to make this channel something useful to people. Portable external drive. So like this, I had to get this when I'm traveling. This is what's the name of this company? This is Nemco Backup Plus Portable Drive. I had to get this when I was out traveling, doing my interviews at makerspaces, because turns out 3 20-minute interviews and sometimes upwards of a half an hour tour and a half an hour Q&A video for each of 50 states ends up being a huge amount of data. And I have a terabit drive on this laptop, but I hit the wall on that one pretty quickly, especially when I take the raw video. I need to get them off my SD cards so that I can use the cards for more recordings. So they go onto the hard drive, and then I have to do the edits. The the video coming off the cards is done, it's usually as a MOV file, and HitFilm doesn't take MOV. Or does it? I think it takes it predominantly in MP4s. But in Windows 10, the easy trick for solving that problem is you go to the file, and where it says .mov, you click on it, you highlight MOV, and you type MP4 and click away, and it says we'll take something to convert such and such, and you just hit OK and load it into HitFilm, and it works just fine. And so I have an MP4, an MOV file, and an in-progress HitFilm edit for each one of those videos, and it quickly mounts up, especially when you add separate audio files that are included for a cleaner audio track for each of one of those, and then just the data. Like, I'm realizing between the two channels that I run and the content that I'm looking to run on all of those, and to a certain degree, 2 channels of at least 10 minutes of content per day, every day for a year at least, I'm going to generate massive, massive amounts of like data and storage requirements. So I am definitely going to have to, I'm going to have to really start like picking up, massive external drive. I'm going to have a stack of them by the end of the year. I have scarily occasionally been like, once I've edited a video, deleting raw videos, and like it scares me to do it because like, if I ever want to go back in and fiddle with something, I don't have the option if I get rid of the originals. But yeah, I'm getting to a point where just like I can remember when I was younger and we were talking about the new hard drives on desktop computers being a gigabyte hard drive. Like, what are you going to do with all that data space? And now we're using 720 and 1080p video recording, and you've got to splice in a high resolution audio track into it and lay in picture-in-picture effects and greens. Like, you're just going to stack so much data usage into that. Yeah, it's just, it boggles the mind that I'm starting already to reach a point where terabit drive is barely enough to function with. That's just, yeah. So Windows, I didn't know Windows could automatically change the format of those files like that until I had to do it, because like all my cameras record in a different format, and HitFilm, for whatever reason, it prefers to work in MP4. There are converters out there that you could load your files in and it'll email you the converted file or some such thing like that, but Windows has a converter in it. Like, it's sort of similar to the fact that when I use LibreOffice for word processing, and for tinkering around with word processing, when I want to save a file as a PDF, just being able to go in and say save as a PDF. I mean, it usually default saves in a LibreOffice format, but being able to save as PDF is helpful. But it also opens PDF files too, so I can do a lot of that kind of work directly in that kind of file. Oh dear, another large withdrawal. Hope my accounts last. But I like the file converters. Like, for the most part, like when I've had to work on documents and somebody requested it in a PDF format, I can just go into LibreOffice and say like, okay, open this file in LibreOffice. Okay, save this file as a PDF, and then I can just send it. Like, I don't have to run through like some converter. The program works. It's like, I love that they're building programs that do that now. I wish they would do that with. I learned to use, was it Google SketchUp for 3D modeling, And that's a very simple, useful 3D modeling piece of software. Does not save in STL files, which is what you need to get a 3D printer to do stuff. It's minor amounts of frustration. And I got a 3D printer a few years ago, a very, very cheap build it yourself, here are the parts, 3D printer. And most of it was laser cut pieces of wood. And I got this 3D printer and building my own files. Like now I can go on Thingiverse and I got an absolute boatload of stuff for me to play with. But back then I was trying to make my own things in 3D printing, and SketchUp is a really good program for doing simple builds in 3D modeling. It's like a super fast, easy to learn CAD program essentially. But it doesn't export as STL. And you had to get a special plugin that let you connect to another piece of software that could convert it to an STL file. And even then, it wasn't always a clean convert. I was like, I hope there's some things out there, like some free 3D modeling softwares with enough capabilities to them that I can play around with converting them to STLs and using the 3D printers at the makerspace or mine, if I can get it up and running again, to 3D model. Because one of the things I want to do, and I don't know, I forget the name of the technique, but you can take multiple pictures of an object and using certain software stitch the images together into a 3D model. And so if the next time I do an art project for this channel, I want to make the art available to people. If I do a sculpture, I would love to be able to make a 3D model of that sculpture with simple photography, upload the STL files, people can download it and print it at makerspaces, or I can upload the STL files to Shapeways and people could order a print in multiple materials. It's like, for making 2D art for paintings or sketches or drawings, I can do a scan or a good photograph at high resolution and send them to a company that can make prints on canvas for people. But for sculptures, it's harder to do that. But we're getting into a point now where we can use 3D scanners and that photography technique of multiple pictures stitched together to form a 3D image, and then sharing or selling the STL files. Oh, Blender, I did play with Blender too. There was a Weta Workshop was doing a, what is it, Dr. Gordbort's steampunk Emporium ray gun design competition with Blender, as you had to produce Blender files. So I joined that competition and I made some goofy ones. I made an absolutely absurd couple of ones. But I taught myself how to use an older version of Blender in, I think it was about 4 hours of goofing around in an afternoon. I picked it up relatively quickly, but I don't do a lot of extreme complicated stuff with it yet. And I haven't touched it in years. So I would like to get back into using Blender. One of the things I want to do with Blender actually is, and this might be useful if your laser cutter is able to use cut through the foam core, right? Like thin pieces of foam core. Because if you can cut out pieces to build things with, one of the things that we had a guy at one of our maker meetings show up, and one of the things he does is he uses Blender, where he builds 3D models in Blender, and then he uses like a feature that lets him unfold it, and he makes them in Papercraft models. So you could put a piece of like cardstock in a laser cutter, have it cut out all the pieces in an unfolded format, and you put glue on some tabs, and then you glue these pieces into 3D models that you can build at home. Burning styrene-filled paper core. That must have been a fun adventure. Must have stunk the place up for days. Um, but yeah, so using Blender to unfold models makes it possible to make 3D models with Papercraft skills, which is a hobby of mine that I've dabbled with but haven't gotten too far with. I used to get some of my favorite books when I was younger were these books that had punch out Papercraft castles that I could build with stand up figures of knights and horses. They were like 2D knights, but the castles were three-dimensional. You folded and like glue tab A into slot B or whatever kind of things. You could build a whole castle, and I love that kind of stuff. And like with Blender, you can model what you want a three-dimensional object to look like and do that. You can make your own cutout models. If you have a laser cutter or a vinyl cutter or a paper cutter to do that kind of stuff, uh, yeah, man, there are a lot of things I want to play with, and I'm like, that would be that might be a product category I could do. Like the next round through, I could do like papercraft models for building at home. So I could go out and experiment with trying to play with Blender again, see if I can figure out the unfold feature of 3D models that I build. I could use OBS to, well, wow, OBS and Blender together might overload my computer though. That might be pushing my luck a little. Might be worth giving it a try once or twice. But uh, record the methods I'm using for doing it, showing other people how to do it, and then making 3D models that you can download, cut out on a paper cutter, or even just print out on a printer and cut out with scissors and glue together a 3D model. Some of that would just be fun to do. Yeah, I love the fact that we have access to all these things now. When I was a kid, wasn't an option for a lot of stuff. Now we have venues for me to be able to publish a book or 3 models or other things like that, and tutorials on YouTube of how to do this stuff. I just I am a little worried sometimes about the copyright stuff and how they're trying to stamp down on some of that creativity and our capabilities. But I mean, we live in a great time, and it's one of those funny facts about the world we live in that for a very long time we assumed that any product worth having was either made by a professional craftsperson or a company, and so that's where you got things. And it turns out everybody's capable of creating something that somebody else might be interested in. And innovation speeds up when you've got 7 billion people. We really at 7 billion world population? Yeah, I guess we are. So 7 billion different minds in the world, each capable of sharing what they're good at and benefiting other people by. Things happen a lot faster when you've got 7 billion minds working on it together. We could probably cut that number in half because half of them don't like working with other people. So, but yeah, so that's sort of where I'm at today. Playing around with OBS, learning a little about what I can do with it. I will do a little dabble in the next 24 hours to maybe see if I can get some simple captures of some of the things I worked on. And I might even go back through and see if I can pull some of the clips from some of these live streams, like the painting stuff, and maybe just do a day of summarizing that, where like one of the updates be like speed through fast uh, uh, fast forwards of those in progress, and just sort of use it as a summary of art week. So what? How many days we got left in this month? I had to throw out some food today because I was getting ready to cook it. I'm like, I'll use this up. It says to use it by the 22nd. I'm going to be making a trip out to Honolulu. I don't know that I want to be eating meat that supposedly was a use by 3 days ago. I did not realize it was the 25th. Like that snuck up on me. I was not ready to be the 25th yet. Um, man, time is moving weird. Yeah, I've got about 1 week before about 5 hours ago. So like 5 hours less than a week, I will be on a flight, and then I will be landing about an hour ago in a week. That makes no sense. Logistically, that's a horrible grammatical structure for time travel. But uh, on Monday at an hour ago now, well, an hour ago California time. So in 2 hours this time, I will be in San Francisco for the night. I got to figure that one out. And then early the next morning, like really, really early the next morning, I have to get back to the airport and hop the flight to Honolulu and get to Honolulu by Tuesday night next week. I think around 1 in the afternoon Honolulu time. So that's 6 hours difference. So that would be 7 p.m. Illinois. I've been to Illinois a couple times recently. Um, that's one of those states where you guys got like so many tolls on your road. It is one of the most expensive states to pass through, I think. Yeah. So, but it is a decent little area to pass through. It must be nice to live out in that area. Do you get nasty winters in Illinois? It's not like Minnesota, is it? I had a friend from Minnesota. Toll booth. You don't have highway tolls? Yeah, Minnesota's. I had a friend from Minnesota, and their winters are savage. And like I would struggle to live out in that environment. Like I'm a New Englander. I'm used to snow and cold. Like we expect that we're going to have at least a couple nights during the winters in this area where it's going to be -15. Oh yeah, if you don't do a lot of highway travel across the state or out of the state, you may not hit the tolls. I know like the two big routes through, like the north and south main route and the east west main route. Like I'm trying to remember if it was Illinois, it might be Indiana. Indiana might be the one with the nasty toll system. As I ran across some of those states, they really did start to blend together. Alrighty, hey, we are at 45 minutes almost. So that was sort of like what I've been doing today. I'm thinking I've got 3 days left. All right. Well, lucky you then, huh? Yeah. No tolls. Okay, so tomorrow's the 26th, 27th, and 28th subsequently. If I did like updates on 2 of the categories of content that I've done in the last 2 months each day, that would pretty much work for those 3 days. And the animation, I don't have anything to really update or show off. So that would cover all 6 of the content levels that I'm working on. So I'll see what I can do with OBS to pull out pieces to show for each of the categories. I talk about what we did in 2 months. And then the 1st and 2nd of the month of March, I should probably set up as detailing the plans of what I hope to do while I'm traveling. Because traveling for a week is going to make doing this difficult, but I still want to try. Because if I'm going to do something like I plan to do this summer where I'm traveling, I want to be able to update for the 1 to 2 months that I travel this month or this summer. I want to still do these daily updates. And in 2020, if I go global and travel to a few other countries, so your birthday's March 7th? 7th. I will be in Honolulu. But I might, well, it would be fun to see if I could do a live stream of making a quick cake. What kind of cake would I do? uh, I don't know. Well, it also depends on the cost of ingredients in Honolulu. Um, do you like Spam? I hear it's very popular in Honolulu. I could probably make some. Oh, my mom used to make a monster amazing cake and some pies. I was always a big fan of what's called a grasshopper pie. I don't know if you've ever had a grasshopper pie, but it's like an Oreo, the crunchy part of the Oreo, not the cream. Um, and you make a crust like a graham cracker crust out of it, and then the inside is a creme de menthe custard with a marshmallow topping, and it's so good. I love a good grasshopper pie. And then the cake, for a few years, my mom used to make a Black Forest chocolate cake. That when I was younger, that was my big thing. But she found this recipe for this cake at one point that was like a big thing for me for several years. And the cake she made was oh, that sucks. Chocolate mint is good. Sorry. But she used to make this cake for me for a few years that was you make a very thin batch of brownie batter and you use it to line like an angel food cake pan. And then you fill it with chocolate mousse and you top it with chocolate whipped cream and like shavings of dark chocolate. And oh man, I tell you what, that is a good cake. It's a chocolate mousse brownie cake or whatever she called it. That was a good cake. And then for a little while, the popular cake. This is a weird tangent we're on, but for a little while, the most famous cake we had at the family was what one of my aunts calls a Kentucky butter cake, and it is a lighter pound cake with you made this pot. You melt just an absolute boatload of butter in a pot with a little bit of with a cup or two of powdered sugar, and essentially you're making a glaze. You're making a clear glaze, but it's a little more liquid than that and a lot more buttery flavoring. And you pierce the pound cake all the way around with enough holes that when you pour this over the top, it just soaks into it. Now, I've heard from a few people that you can add a little bit of booze to the the sauce that you let soak into that. But that was a good cake. Lately, I think the other cakes that the family's been playing with are they're doing these weird chocolate beer cakes. I am not a big fan of those. I'm not a beer drinker, so maybe that's part of it. But like, it's such a weird thing to do. But to each their own, I guess. My big thing has always been like when I discovered how easy it is to make donuts, I really started tweaking those recipes in weird ways. So I've made some weird donuts um, and Rice Krispie treats. I did a lot of strange Rice Krispie treats. I think I talked a little bit about that yesterday. Where I was talking about when you can make your own marshmallows from scratch, you can make different flavors of marshmallow, and when you can make different flavors of marshmallow, you can make different flavors of Rice Krispie treat. So you could make like a pumpkin spice marshmallow from scratch and incorporate that in. And if you throw in like a little vanilla and white chocolate to it, you can really make a interesting Rice Krispie treat. I did apple spice, pumpkin spice, gingerbread spice. I did too. That one was tricky. I've been looking at potentially doing some savory. I guess you would almost call them a Rice Krispie snack. So it's almost like a granola bar. Yeah, I play with culinary stuff sometimes. Yeah, so I could probably yeah. Long story less long. I could look into potentially seeing if I could make a cake. It depends on where I'm staying and my hosts as to how much access. And I probably won't be eating a lot of it while I'm there. But if my hosts when I'm traveling are interested in having a cake, um, I can leave them with a cake. They'll probably be quite happy with that. I'll see if I can find a good recipe for some interesting chocolate cakes. Alrighty, so we're coming up on an hour now. Thanks for joining me, and I will see you with some summaries of the last 2 months tomorrow, I guess. All right, take care and have a good night. Okay, so there we go.